Hello everyone, SirMonkeySuit Zappy here, back again with Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex Season 1. We are on episode 11, and in the last episode, it was a standalone episode in which we got a bit of backstory on Bato, which was nice to obviously have. It seems as though with the standalone episodes now, well, if we're talking about, the last two, because we got like some character development with Motoko in the previous one, and then Bato in last episode, it would be nice to see, like, in future standalone episodes, if we get, like, one for Tozuka or someone like that, and Aramaki and things like that, you know what I mean? Just to, like, flesh out, obviously, the team at Section 9 and whatnot. But yeah, so the last episode was basically about Bato and his sort of slight PTSD that he was having, where he got all of these, like, sort of feelings back from when he was, I think he called himself, like, a ranger, but he was part of a unit that went into, I believe it's South Africa, but it could be South America, where he was in the jungle, and the American Empire was doing this thing. They had a project called Project Sunset, which essentially is like they send units in sort of ahead of time to gain the trust of sort of like the people, and then basically once they've got their trust, they do disgusting things like, skin them alive and shit like that. Basically just to, the end goal is to sort of kind of get control of that country or whatever it is, because it makes them lose the will to fight, knowing like what like these atrocious acts are going on. So, but it was a sort of beautiful moment, specifically at the end of that episode, where obviously Bato is chasing down Marco and everything like that, and then at the end, Bato proves that he has moved on from that life, whereas Marco obviously didn't. And yeah, it was sort of like a nice sort of roundup of that episode. The CIA agents, the fucking absolute dickheads, didn't get what they wanted, and everything like that. But it was a sort of a juxtaposition of sort of like, it was like a mournful episode, but like, it was like beautiful at the same time. You know what I mean? It was nicely put, I think, that episode all around. So yeah, really, really cool. Other than that, the complex episode beforehand, because obviously we need to mention that since that's the overarching story, we just had a bunch of people in a chat room talk about what could be and what couldn't be, in regards to the Laughing Man and everything like that. I think actually the last thing I want to talk about just quickly before we get into the next episode is the World War III thing, which I didn't point out last episode in the discussion. Because when I was obviously watching it in real time, like obviously during the reaction, I didn't pick up on the fact that it actually said World War III. I think if I recall, I remember it saying like something like World War II, but I just like sort of brushed it off as like it's not really taking place in our world. It's like, it is obviously Earth, but it's more of like a fictional kind of Earth where some things may have been different on the lead up to 2030, whenever we are, you know what I mean? And so I just never really clocked it and talked about it, but it actually said World War III, so that's just an interesting sort of side bit to know about the about this world and the fact that they actually have had a World War III. So yeah, very interesting. I don't know if it'll ever really come back up in regards to anything. If it does, it'll be some kind of political thing between maybe Japan and the American Empire, since like, they were a bit iffy with the last standalone episode with Bato and stuff. Like they were, you know what I mean? It's like they were at odds with each other. So I don't know if that'll be something that comes back up or whatnot. Could be like World War IV's on the way, who knows? But I don't know. I'll keep it in mind. Anyway, yeah, nothing else to really talk about, so we're going to get in episode 11 and see what we get. If you want to watch the actual reaction, link is in the description below. There's also a link to the full length there. If you do want to watch it in full and not just the 10-minute version, then the offer is there for you. But yeah, nothing else to really talk about, so we're going to get in episode 11 and see what we get. So without further ado, let's go. Okay, episode 11. Wow. That may be my favourite complex episode to date, I think. For a number of reasons. First of all, I think this is the first complex episode where I can almost see where it's like I have in the past, right, with other complex episodes, like the last complex episode is a great example where we have about as much information as the people in the chat room, just basically giving out what could be and what couldn't be. But this episode here almost gave you that little inkling of like, this direction, this is where it's heading. Unless this is a see, because I wouldn't think that this episode would be like, otherwise it would be a waste of an episode just to throw the viewer off. Though I don't know, because the way that the story could be told, it could be a number of different things. But this is the first time that I've actually gotten something to grasp onto, is like to what the Laughing Man is and how this whole thing is sort of happening. So back at the party thing where they were trying to, like, a number of people were trying to kill the Superintendent General, this explains that. I think all of those people that tried to kill him were messed with in some way and had these bizarre memories. And that was sort of... It's like those were just regular people, but with the virus that was obviously pre-planted and set to go off at that time, that's what activated it. That's my first sort of theory there in regarding that. The thing is, with that specific event, it wasn't the same as the whole idea of the logo getting out there. So, like, the reason why it's everywhere, but it's mainly because we have this, essentially, like this, it's like a rehabilitation center for those with these cyber brains that, you know, some of them being too connected and essentially being able to just see the, you know, it's like being in the Matrix, but, you know what I mean, you're able to see them all. You're able to just, you know, recognize it and sort of bend it to your will, kind of thing. And, you know, it's similar in that regard, that you have some of these people that can, they just know it, like they're too connected. It's like they are the machine, they are the system, and so they're able to just find ways around it, to tear it down, build it up, do whatever the hell they want. And that's the thing, is that with this specific facility, you'd think that there would have to be politics involved somewhere along the line, somewhere, somebody up top that allows this stuff to happen, or it's under his sort of, under his orders that that's what this rehabilitation, like, sort of center is doing. But it's like slave labor, like I said in the reaction. It's you know what I mean. And then to go so late, I would say that they are being mistreated. Not that they know themselves, because they're, you know, mentally handicapped. And however they became that way, I don't know, because I feel as though it's not a case of people, like kids that were born this way, but mostly after, you know, after they got a cybernetic brain implanted in there, and then since then that's what it, like, either just being naturally too connected. I don't know about that. I feel as though they were just regular kids that got these cybernetic brains and then were hacked into by whoever the Laughing Man is, and then that is, you know, he's essentially using this, like, these kids in this facility as a way to essentially just link it everywhere to the outside world. I think this is the, like, it's either that, or it could be the case of these kids are just that way inclined, because there is that, like, you know, whole thing in, like, our world where you have these kids that are, it's like they are mentally handicapped, but because their brain works differently, they can be like geniuses in a certain field, you know what I mean? Because, like, their mind is so focused on one thing that that's all they ever think about, that when it comes to other things, they're really like sort of unable to like obviously look after themselves and everything like that. So in that regard, you know what I mean, they are mentally handicapped. But because I mean, that's the thing. It's just like the trade-off is that their mind is so like taken up by this one thing that they're capable of doing that they just stick onto that. And it sort of makes sense as well with the first kid basically saying like it's not my online day, is that's his sort of focus. That's all he cares about, is just being in there, because it's almost like that's his world. Like he has free reign within that world, and he has control in there, whereas in the you know, the real world he doesn't. So it could be that, and he's taken advantage of these genius like, you know, kids. I say genius obviously in regards to their compatibility with like the system and everything like that, because they're able to just tear down whatever they want and build up their own sort of security systems for what I assume is the Laughing Man's whole thing. You know what I mean? He wants all of his like identity and everything that he's involved with to be completely anonymous, so that he can't be traced, but he can break into anything he wants. And anybody that has this has their sort of it's almost like, you know what it is, right? The thing that I was so interested in throughout this episode was Togusa going in there and it being a ghost, like a ghost town. It was like there was nobody there, and then as soon as he entered, well, even as soon as he entered, it was still empty until he went down like a corridor and into a room, and then all of a sudden, bang! You know what I mean? Because he entered like the networking room, right? So he was surrounded by technology there, and then all of a sudden it was like there was a kid, and then all of a sudden there was a woman, and then all of a sudden, like over the course of like, you know, whatever, not too long, it was like, right, the facility is filled with, you know, people. It's alive. And I said like during the reaction, it seems like he's in a virtual world. It's like, but Togusa never like clocked on that he was, you know, and that obviously is cemented by the fact that at the end there, he thought he was jotting down or, you know, like drawing out AI, when in reality he was just doing the Laughing Man thing. But the thing is that when he was in that virtual world or whatever it was, I don't even know. This is the thing, because I don't know if it was a virtual world or if that was the Laughing Man, like making a sort of an alternate reality around him. You know what I mean? But this is the thing, is like the interesting part about this is that it's Togusa that's in there, and as far as I know, he's got like he's not cybernetic. I don't think he has a cybernetic brain or anything, does he? Because he's the human one of the. He's essentially the human character of the show. So he's like the one that he might be my favourite character, actually, because I think that in a world like this, even though it's like, oh well, he's human, so what? Like, you know what I mean? It's like we already know that kind of perspective. What's the perspective of the, you know, people that are truly cybernetic and everything like that? But I think when you have a world that's like essentially filled with all that stuff, it's the one that is the minority that I think has the interesting like perspective on things, because he's the one that's different living in this world, kind of thing. You know what I mean? So I don't know, and I'm trying to go back through like the other episodes and like if there was any mention of Togusa being like just having a cybernetic brain, but everything. I'm pretty sure he's all human though. I'm pretty sure he is. So the whole, if I'm theorizing that it was just an image planted that he could see, and it wasn't virtual reality but actually alternate reality, then I don't know how that would work. because he doesn't have anything that can be hacked into to see what the Laughing Man or whatever wants him to see. But then that also rings true for the virtual reality thing. Like, I don't know how you pull him into that, you know? You know what I would really like? I would really love the next Complex episode for, like... Oh, but no, because then he would just... Surely the same thing would happen. I would just love a time where, like, someone else goes back into that same complex, and it's, like, abandoned. And it's like, there was nothing here to begin with, kind of thing. Because it's just like, in my mind, I was just thinking back to the last Complex episode where they're like in a virtual chat room. And I'm like, it's almost like the same thing. It's like, this is a virtual space that has been inhabited by these kids. And it's set up like a mental institution. So that people walking in don't truly realize that that's what they're in. But it was that whole sort of thing. Like, the interesting part was that Togusa was being manipulated the whole time, and he never realized. It's like it's like that. This is like similar to what I was talking about in the last Complex episode where they had the chat room and stuff, and I was talking about how it's like propaganda in a way. It's like people are so used to seeing it that it almost becomes a part of their daily life, and then all of a sudden it's like they are haunted by the thing. It's like they can't help but have it in their life. And that's just kind of like what happened with Togusa there, where it's like he has these memories of, like, that's what Motoko said, right? Motoko said that he has like these bizarre memories or something like that of him being there. And I'm just trying to think, like, what was it? Which memories specifically were the bizarre ones? Because if anything, whatever Togusa was seeing there wasn't real, because that was that whole thing that Bato said with the left glove, right? It's like, apparently it has some symbolic nature to it, where it's like it's something that's like not really there, or like something that doesn't really exist. But obviously the only mention of the Laughing Man wasn't that logo at the end. The only other mention of it was the writing on the side of the locker or whatever the hell it was. Because that's the same like sentence, the deaf mutes thing, right? The only thing that was different was the last bit, which I kind of want to see if I can find it, because it was like, or should I, or something like that, right? And it's almost like, I don't know, that must be it. That must be it. That must have been the moment that's implanted, like somehow it's affected Togusa to the point where that's all he sees. Like, it's almost like his mind has been altered as well in terms of, yeah, so I thought what I'd do was I'd pretend I was one of those deaf mutes. Or should I? Now, I'm sure on the logo that the or should I is never there. You know what I mean? Like, that's not a part of it on there. I don't know. I don't know how deep I should really go into sort of theorizing things. I don't know if one of those deaf mutes means like one of those like one of the kids in this like mental institution, like the kids that literally don't talk. Like, for example, Aoi, he'd never talked until it was like his conscious, like there was another consciousness in there that you could presume is the Laughing Man, right? Or the chief. It's like another consciousness that took him over. But the thing that I find interesting was that it almost seems as though, like, the body of Ai was no longer there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he ran off almost like with a physical body kind of thing, you know? But yeah, like, I mean, one of those deaf mutes, it could be literal, meaning, like, yeah, one of those. So Ai, also the big guy, who had the, like, Togusa had the weird vision of the eyes in the back of the guy's neck. Like, I don't know. And it almost feels like, the interesting part of that is obviously the or should I bit. Because I wonder if that's what, like, if that, like, I mean, it's oil painting, right? Isn't that the same shit that was in the room where he fought the cyborg and whatnot? So I wonder if... And he was so, like... When he was fighting the cyborg... He was so, like, preoccupied with, like, the oil paintings and whatnot, you know what I mean? Like... I don't know how he got into... Like, he hacked into the door with just a... you know, whatever the fuck it was. It's almost like it was his vision of it. And the interesting thing... Oh, it's all coming together in my head. So, the girl, right, who does the oil paint... I wish that fucking dog would shut... I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a fucking dog barking outside. The girl... She was interesting, because she was the one that talked to... or Togusa like talked to her about it, and oh, that's really like really good. And then she was saying, I'll build the I'll draw the world how I want it, or something like that, right? Or make it beautiful. And it's almost like everything that was happening was in Togusa's head, you know. And it's like, I wonder if Togusa took that on as like, and everything that he's saying is a product of his sort of. Like, it's almost like he's making it up, but he's not in charge of it. And that these oil paintings are something that he is, like, thinking about. And it's almost like he became somebody else. Like, when the guy came in, the cyborg and whatnot, and he was ready to fight him, he was preoccupied with, like, you know, you'll destroy the oil paintings or something like that. And then the oil paint was used to write down the deaf mutes thing, and then or should I? And then as soon as the cyborg said you're going to fight with that, Togusa looked at it like, wait, what? Like almost as if Togusa like came back, like that was him at that moment. He was like, wait a minute, what am I holding? What is this? And it makes me think that everything that he was seeing was in his head. It has some basis, like, obviously in reality. Like, for example, the woman, right, who clocked him over the head, right, I feel like wasn't something that actually happened, because if you notice, when Motoko goes a bit like, you know, wake up, there's no blood there. You know what I mean? So it's almost like everything is happening in his head isn't actually happening. But that's the thing, is that because he's human, I don't know how his perception's being changed, you know? Because everything's just hacking, right? So how... This will all change if somehow there's something that says that Togusa actually has some... Either he does have a cybernetic brain, or he has some kind of implant, or something like that, I don't know. But the interesting thing is, yeah, there wasn't any blood there when Motoko tried to get him up. Which means that at that moment when the woman, like, thingy's over and, like, tries to connect into the back of his head, even though, like, well, how do you do that? Because he doesn't have one, right? That was possibly the Laughing Man getting access to who's trying to hunt him down. And he ends up finding out that it is actually Section 9. The woman that was... you know, sort of connected to it, she got like that sort of backlash virus thing or whatever it was, and I don't know if that killed her or not. It very well could have done, at least incapacitated her. So yeah, I mean, considering all of that, it's like the writing of the deaf mutes, or should I, is, I think, Togusa writing that to himself, but he's unaware of it. So this whole thing is already in his mind. So now it's like something in his mind that he doesn't have access to in terms of memory. But the moment either he thinks of anything revolving around that whole event instead of what he actually wants to draw, which is I, he ends up drawing the logo instead. So his mind is being altered as well. The thing is that there has to be some basis of reality in this rehabilitation center, because we saw a scene where Togusa wasn't even there, where it was I, as the chief, talking to the kid. We never got to see what the chief or I left, so that they have something to remember him by, right? Oh, is that still in Togusa's mind, though? Was that scene playing out in Togusa's mind? How would that work, though? How would that work? But then, to some degree, that would make Togusa the laughing man, though. Or at least, like... But, I don't know. If he has access to his... I don't know, because he doesn't have access to certain parts of his memory. And I don't know if it could be a case of... I mean, Togusa was part of the police force, right? Which was where this whole thing sort of started. Like, the police force were, like, sort of a part of what was going on, and they were trying to, like, cover things up and everything like that before... Well, the Laughing Man thing only came up, and Togusa was already involved, like, into the Section 9, you know? Like, in my head, I'm almost thinking of it as, like, Death Note. So, if you've seen Death Note before, you know there's a moment where, or, like, there's a big sort of thing where Light uses the Death Note, and, you know, by sort of, like, getting rid of it temporarily, he loses his memory, right? But he sets it up in such a way that when he does get his memories back, it all works according to his plan, so that he can get the name of L, right, in the end. And I almost wonder if there's a way that he can do that somehow, by... If he really is, like, if it actually is Togusa, but he has certain access to certain memories that he can go and get. Because the only thing I'm thinking of is I don't know where it takes place. That's the problem. If he is a human, then surely the alternate reality thing wouldn't work. He couldn't be hacked into that way. He couldn't be dragged into a virtual world unless he has machinery, which he doesn't. So the only other scenario is that everything that is happening within Togusa's head, and the moment that he walked in there, it's almost like a similar thing to the event that took place with the Superintendent General, where the virus activated like people's like way of doing this. That if he was to walk in there, he could have set it up so that when he walked in there, these are the memories he got. And if he purposefully knocked out himself, so that he could, you know, get away again, right, and lock himself away in a different memory bank somewhere, like, else within his brain, so that when Togusa woke up again, it was just it was just old Tagusa again, and it didn't seem like anything had changed. That's what's really bugging me, is that I don't know how you get a human, how you hack a human. So it has to be his memories that's doing this, right? It has to be his perception of what he's seeing. But then I don't want Tagusa to be the laughing man. You know what I mean? Because I like him. But then that would be the biggest twist ever. It's like the character that I like the most ends up being the antagonist of the show. But then is he the antagonist? I mean, he's trying to kill the superintendent general, but in the end, he could be trying to change the world for the better. He might be like this big whole fucking, like rebel to take on the establishment that is killing the world in a way. But then he's using these kids. But are they real? It's just this fucking, honestly. I don't know, man. I don't know. That's literally the only theory that I can come up with that makes sense. Because he's a human. And as far as I can remember, it never said that he was part, like he had any cybernetic like brain or anything at all. So but that's the thing, everything that was happening to him, he never there was never a moment where he was like, huh, that was weird. He just went on like nothing happened. And that's why, like, when I liken it back to Death Note with Light, when he gets his memories back in Death Note, like, Light plays it off like, yeah, this is what was always meant to happen. It's like, when he got his memories back, it was like, yeah, like, there was a moment where Light was like, I win. But it's, it's not like... It's like it was always meant to happen that way. But everything that, like, Tagusa... It was like... If he, let's say, hypothetically that he is, right? I'm like such an idiot when he's clearly not. But if he already knew, then when he gets access to certain memories, the Laughing Man ones, right? Of like, yeah, I set this up and everything like that. I don't know, but then like, yeah, it's like Tagusa must not have had like his memories of being in Section 9 in certain moments. Like, for example, the time when he's like, you'll destroy the oil paintings. And it wasn't until the cyber guy, the like big robot guy, said, what are you gonna do with that? And he looked at it like, what? kind of thing. It's just... There's something there. There's something there, definitely. And just the fact of Tagusa previously being with the police force and, Motoko bringing him in, you can see how there can kind of possibly be a link there, and why it would only be Tagusa that this works on, like, even though he's the human. It's just weird, man. Like, the only thing that wouldn't really work with, though, is the swing. Because when he walked in to the sort of, like, the outer sort of yard area, just out front, the swing was moving, and there's no one there. But then that could be, like, the, sort of like the thing that, like, oh, that's the activation. He's walking past it, that's the activation. But then it took some time to activate it then, because he walked in and it looked like it'd been abandoned at the front desk. And it wasn't until he got into the room where it truly came, you know what I mean? But I don't know, maybe that could have just been an inclination, like, you're going the right way. And something's like leading him to a certain point. Like he knew where to go. Was there anything that really led him to that room other than him just walking around? You know what I mean? I don't know. It just seemed like everything that he was doing, he was never fazed by anything. So it's almost like he's been here before. and it was that, like, you know, zoom into his face. It's just kind of like, and all of a sudden he was somewhere else. It's like he's getting memories from different places that he didn't have access to before. So that's the only working theory that I can come up with. But yeah, I mean, that's that's all I've got. So yeah, really, really cool episode. That was actually, I think that's my favourite episode of the show so far. So really, really cool. But anyway, yeah, that's all I've got. So thank you for watching. In the description below, I've linked to certain things. One of them is the Discord, so you can get yourself over there if you wish. And I also have a Patreon page as well. So if you do want to support me on Patreon, that'd be very much appreciated. There is a bunch of different tiers and rewards there, like early access. Of course, episode 12 will come out the same day as this for the public. But if you want to gain access to episode 13 and 14 right now, you can do with the early access tier. $5 a month gives you access to shows a week early. There's also a link to the full... No, there's not a link to the full length. There's the full-length tier for the $10 a month if you do want to watch any of these shows in full and not just the 10-minute cut version. And then there's the exclusive tier where you can have access to my movie reactions, everything when I start reacting to movies and things like that as well. So yeah, but that's all I've got. So thank you everyone for watching. I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.